Shelley
All
will
sorts
not
of
be at this
amazing
next
stuff.
one. If I'm gonna have a lighter crowd, I'm gonna ask.
What was he?
this
Was he
lady
a
and
comedian or
The
something?
last one that reached out.
He was a
I'll ask her to
comedian.
say
He is
that.
still is a comedian, but he was on, remember he did
Because it's,
Fear
you know,
Factor?
it's a vibrational
and-
connection.
Maybe a couple of
Oh, was
sessions
that
will
him?
drop
If
off.
I.
Yeah.
Fear Factor?
And then
Okay.
he does he commentates the
I'd be
MMA,
delighted. I really,
Oh, he gets into
the
that
UFC
too?
fights.
Yeah.
I love our group, if all, I guess that would be
Eight or
fine.
nine?
But that was all
I
due to
guess
his,
if we
his
all
background in making
Full time,
I
yeah.
wouldn't even understand it. But you know,
But that's not
on any given week,
Huh.
yeah, on any given
But
week, you're down 20,
Yeah.
30,
just
even
amazing
more.
the stuff
Yeah.
he's
And then it feels.
knowledgeable
He's got an open mind,
Just
yeah.
feels
You're
like
real.
the
That one night I
energy.
remember like six
I'll
of us or
check him out.
something.
I'm in the office a lot, a couple of days a
Like,
week,
Yeah.
so
in my mind,
I-
6 is
I
my
search for
jam,
stuff to
and I
listen
find
to.
it to be really
Ever since
interesting.
I started, we haven't gone to the rules.
I listen to Shane Wilson sometimes.
Oh, we had a couple. We
In
had
the
one
office.
where, there was a woman, Adrian.
Guided meditations or?
You know, one of the men.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
all
some of the
very
YouTube
funny.
stuff.
But
Oh.
Archie showed up the one night, and it was just the two of them, like, everybody bought
Yeah,
it.
almost
Like,
half the
you
stuff
never
is
know,
unlisted,
so
you know,
weird.
because it's in the
And, you know,
program.
and it's, to me,
Okay.
it's not really
Teaching
fair
program.
to them either.
How many different, you have your own
And then
channel,
people on
right?
RSVP,
Yeah.
How many different things you have on that
issues
channel
with
now?
that, with
How many different videos?
Yeah.
They were not really
I think
RSVP.
it's about
So
400.
I kinda like,
400?
now I just,
Yeah.
now I send it out typically on Friday, like I'll send
Just
another
you.
one out on
I usually
Friday
put-
to just say,
That's good.
I
hey,
try to
who's all
put,
coming,
you know, like 2 a
and
week,
so Carrie's
Okay.
coming,
including
Cameron's coming.
this, if it works, you know.
Margie's
Thank you,
fine.
people.
Margie's
We're live
fine.
right now. Yeah, we'll be starting here pretty soon. We still got a couple of minutes. Yeah, yeah. Streaming, you know. That's the idea.
But I told her she really wanted to bring that.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Make room, we're gonna do it.
I won't swing it around though, don't worry.
I'd say this is the last 2 times, so this is the 3rd meeting here.
But it seems to
This room is
start out.
First time I'm here on Thanksgiving.
Every time I heard the door, it was like having a panic attack, because it's like, oh
There's
my
no
god,
room.
what are we gonna put everybody, oh my
Yeah,
god.
that temple hall is bigger. right?
It's big, it's definitely big, yeah. This is cozy, this is cozy.
Imagine they got more rooms so that you have
That's
less
right.
people you can put in the
These
room.
are-
Exactly.
You know,
it's
those are
master-
smaller.
Yeah, yeah.
The temple.
Except for those get a smaller.
We don't have a little reading pamphlets anymore either.
No,
That's right.
I told Shane to put in the teleprompter for all of us
Yeah,
if we wish to.
if you want to read it.
For the meta?
Yeah.
Is there somewhere you can buy those or?
The Loving Kindness Sutra.
Yeah, he's got it.
That's a really good one. I love
You can
reading.
take
Yeah,
it.
that's a good one, yeah.
You can leave them
I
$1 and
didn't
take
want
one.
to walk out with 25 of them.
Did you want a bunch of? Because I'm sure.
For
Monty
here.
would.
Yeah, well, you bought them for here, huh?
Oh,
Here.
oh.
I got the Pali memorized, so I can do that
All
one.
right, Mark's gonna do the chanting.
Yeah, we got the-
Right, yeah.
The poly expert.
That's the only one I memorized, not the English.
This way nobody can tell you made a mistake. Oh, too funny.
Which one?
So can we get it somewhere online or something? The same sutra?
Probably.
Probably.
I've seen it online, but it's
But
a
not
little
the
bit
same,
different.
yeah,
It's
it's not the
different.
same version, right?
Yeah, we could make copies of that.
Yeah, that would be, I really like that,
Yeah,
chatting
that is a
together
good
is
one.
nice.
It is
Do most people like that?
Yeah,
Really?
I got one in my
I really like it, after the meditation, when you're chanting together, it's really nice.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, I'll put that together. Remind me, would you?
One more thing to ask.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
One more thing to do.
Terry's to-do list.
So we're still live.
Scattering lately, oh my gosh, I can't believe the scattering things. This is hilarious, really. It's the aging brain, it just does what it wants to do
Don't
sometimes.
say the A
What'd you have for lunch yesterday?
Oh, don't even,
I
the
can't
food,
even.
as much as I'm such a foodie, I don't recall,
I know.
So weird, I cannot
I think
ever
it's the
remember.
chemtrails.
right? No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Are you still on that sandwich? I don't know, he was like one of those sandwiches he ate was continuously for I don't know how many months. Is that what you said? I think you said that. Who was somebody who's had the same sandwich for lunch? You said that, right? Like, so that you won't forget what you had for lunch.
Every day.
I know, the same thing every day, so.
You-
Who said that? Somebody at the temple said that.
You could have peanut butter and jelly, and then like the next day have jelly and peanut butter, something like that.
Variety.
Mix it up a little bit.
Shane's
And make it more interesting, you know, a little
Shane's about
spice,
variety.
spice it up.
Didn't Einstein have like one suit or something like that?
It was
Like
all the same.
Multiple the same
It was just-
suits?
Yeah. There was the same.
Same exact route, like 5 of them.
John does that.
We live in such a
He has
digital
one,
world.
he wears a black t-shirt.
Everything's constantly going through the
Most men
brain.
do.
He's a bunch of them, you know.
Just,
Sometimes you change
the
colors.
brain just kind of.
Too much.
Yeah, it does, it
I
feels like.
think he
kind
didn't
of
want to have to
overload.
decide
Yeah.
on
There's
things. It's
one-
like,
And you know, like business are involved in those things, and more things you have going on too, you know, I run a couple businesses, like I help him, and my kids stuff, and it's like, just on and on and on, and I just, I feel like I can't contain it all sometimes, I really kind of struggle with it.
mental energy.
And I hate that because, you know, my younger days, I didn't really, I mean, I always, you know, I can be kind of edgy, but I feel like now it's like it's such an overload, and I don't, this is the most overload my life has ever been, yet it kind of feels like that, you're right, it's just the, everything digital, it's just boom, 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 fast,
Everywhere you go,
coming
it's digital,
everywhere.
you're getting hit with
Yeah,
digital.
it is, it makes for a lot of
At the same
confusion.
time, we have tools that, for instance, the calendars and the schedules and the reminders,
Oh,
so we have
yeah.
all the tools.
Couple more
But still,
people and
it
we'll
feels
start.
Like a lot, you know.
Yeah, it does, it feels kind of overwhelming, when our lives are just like, you know, we have to take care of insurance issues and, you know, and like,
That's
you
like
know, this
more
week it's been like
complicated.
homeowner warranty, I had to try to find out the best deal on my
Yeah, I never had
contact
any choice,
lenses and
or whatever
insurance
my
issues
brother
and
had last
car
year.
accident, and just like, and these things, like, they show up your whole day,
Never
it's
ate
like,
more last year,
wait, I
that's
didn't
what I
get the
was
creative
doing.
stuff done that I wanted to do for my business, and it's really wild, it's a lot, it's wild, it's like our poor brains are just like, no, I'm so tired, I know, I'm so tired, and it's not because I'm anything physical, I might have gone to work now, it's just my brain, it's
Super
like,
denims?
I'm done, right? I mean, just exhaustion by the end of the day.
Cortisol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what he says too, I know, right? All
My brother was a
all the
year
thinking,
older,
thinking,
so it's like-
thinking all day long.
Constant.
you
It
know?
becomes toxic. I've been doing a lot of studying on stress,
Buy me new
and the cortisol, believe it or not, becomes toxic in the body.
Oh, yeah.
And then that's why people, you know, they reach for the candy bars and the stimulants to offset it, and then you're driving, then it produces more cortisol.
Yeah,
And then you go home at night and you drink alcohol
right.
or some type of thing to bring you back down. And you're in this constant.
Yeah, you're up trying to get down, and yeah.
Yeah.
It's a crazy
Just doing,
existence.
there's no time to be, you know, that's what we have lost.
Well, let's
We just have never.
get started here. So, according to my clock, it's 4 minutes after 7. Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And I don't think there's any. I mean, I don't see any new faces. That's Dan's first time. Dan's been here, but yeah, this new place. So yeah, that's good.
Excuse me, are there any cups for the water dispenser thing here?
There's some in the cupboard. Yeah, some glasses in the cupboard. You can just help yourself there. Yeah. There's there are some, you know, like some plastic cups somewhere, but just dig around, you'll find something.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what stuff is right, Chris kind of did a little rearranging, I don't even know what stuff is right now.
Yeah, help yourself though. Yeah. Your host will help you. Chris will
Chris
help
is
you.
getting up to do it, thanks, Chris, I used to know where stuff was.
Yeah.
Guilted him.
Hello. So we're talking about cortisol and how it. That's one of the, you know, it's funny that you brought that up because it's one of the huge reasons that meditation is so beneficial for us is that it's a stress reducer, and primarily because of the cortisol, you know, in that area. And cortisol is not necessarily our friend. I mean, it could be in a pinch, you know, when that tiger is chasing us in the jungle. But unfortunately, fortunately, we don't run into that. Kind of unfortunate too. It'd be kind of fun to, you know, have tigers running around and stuff like that. But kind of exotic, you know. But one of the problems it does is it causes a lot of memory loss for us. You know, when we're under stress and we have situations where we have to have that sharp memory and remember things, cortisol just kind of sucks that memory out of us, and it causes so many other problems. You said that it's
Toxic.
a toxin to the body, and you mentioned that you have to eat. I mean, people do they feel that within their system. And, you know, a lot of times we think that people are reaching for food to distract themselves, which is true, but also to deactivate that toxin of the cortisol, particularly in the area of carbohydrates and sugars, which is basically the same thing, you know. And of course, you know, people get in the habit of coming home and having that glass of wine, which is really sweet, you know, and it can actually create more cortisol. And one thing, I don't know if you checked in, did the study, but cortisol while we're sleeping and how that can affect us as well. I don't know if you looked into that. That's an area that I want to kind of dig into a little bit.
Like having a nightmare, like a fight or flight nightmare?
Yeah. Or, you know, the alcohol-induced sleep, you know, that a lot of people feel, you know, they'll have a few drinks before they go to bed, you know, make them sleep a little bit better, but not allowing them to get into that healing realm, that realm sleep, where the healing comes, you know, we have to heal mentally and physically. I don't know what the statistics are, but there's been a lot of talk that I've heard in the past about meditation being more relaxing and more healing than a lot of the sleep patterns that we have, because it's more controlled, you know, when we do it correctly. So it's interesting, you know, to be able to consciously relax the body. You know, first consciously and then subconsciously we're just kind of there, you know. So and I think a lot of people would agree, most of us, do we know what the 5 hindrances are? You know, we've talked about those and, you know, quite a bit. You know, it's our desires, let's say our strong desires, and aversion or ill will, restlessness and worry, and doubt, and then the fatigue, or what is called sloth and torpor. And once those hindrances are gone, then we are pretty much stress-free. You know, we're not reaching to be someplace else or do something else. And we can't have those hindrances while we're not dwelling in the past or trying to fix something in the future. You know, then that means we're in this presence. That cortisol isn't, I see it as like a little drip system, you know, in an irrigation system, like, you know, just, or a drip system from the IV in the hospital, yeah. And, but when we're present and we don't have the hindrances, you know, which is kind of that indicator that we are okay when the hindrances aren't there. We can feel that just as well as we can feel the cortisol. We can feel, in other words, we can actually feel when that cortisol isn't there. It's like, you know, resting in that presence. And you know, in meditation, of course, when we really want to get someplace in a non-goal orientated way in our practice, it's when those hindrances aren't there, and we know that we're in that presence. And when we're there, we can even think about the future, think about the past, as long as we are aware that we're doing it in this presence. You know, but when we get drawn into it, and the subconscious doesn't know whether it's real or if it's false, that we are, you know, looking back at an activity that happens, and then the cortisol starts hitting us mentally, you know. We think about an experience that happened, PTSD, for example, you know, how that is triggered. And our body doesn't know whether it's real because the subconscious, you know, takes us there. Subconscious can be both our friends and our enemy, both. And so we feel as if that's a real experience, a real thing that's happening. And the cortisol pumps away, just like when we're sleeping, kind of doing a roundabout here, come back to sleeping. And so if we remember something, a traumatic, something that comes up that is in our sleep, a traumatic experience that triggers something, cortisol will fire while we're sleeping. Or even when we're meditating, if we can't control our thoughts. So it's interesting.
It's gone way beyond the protective mechanism that it was supposed to be or that it is in animals. And I remember reading that even
The cortisol itself.
cortisol,
yeah.
even like, we even react to like a traffic jam or a situation like that with that fight or flight mentality, which triggers the cortisol, even in like a setting like that, a traffic jam. Whereas in the animal world, probably primitive man, it was only triggered by real life and death situations, so it's very distorted now.
Yeah. Fear and anger, are the primary problems with it, and or that trigger it. But excessive, desire, such as not wanting to be in the situation that we're in. I desire to be someplace else or doing something else, that kind of thing. Which is constant for a lot of people. It's constant. So, so our formal practice of meditation allows us to see all that. It's wonderful that way. And so if we can do it if we're in our formal practice of meditation and we know that we can sit in this presence and then kind of expand on those moments as we sit in meditation, and then we can take that actual experience out into the world when we're not doing our formal meditation practice. If we could only do that while we're meditating, if it was proven that we can only do that while we're meditating, we probably wouldn't even be here. This meditation practice is wonderful and everything, but in order to actually make it work for us, we have to take it out into the world, when we're doing our worldly things and when our senses are firing and we're seeing all these pretty pictures and experiencing this stuff and, how we react to all that. Everything that we see and hear and smell, taste and touch and think. So that's one thing we should look for in our meditation. So that's really the invitation tonight, is kind of circling back to the 5 hindrances, and when they're not there, come into this presence. So what are we wrestling with? Are we wrestling with anything in our meditation? And are we able to just genuinely accept everything as it is, at least for now, within these 30, 40 minutes, whatever our meditation might be. And just get a taste of that, and just see how sweet that is. And if it feels good for us, then we recognize that and we can, take it out into the world. So in a way, that being in this still presence and not having any of these 5 hindrances is synonymous. They mean the same thing, basically. And it's so much so that if we have a practice of jhana or getting into these deep states of concentration, we can't do it if we have any of the hindrances. They have to be gone completely. And it's not really a goal in meditation or anything like that. It happens naturally when we I was going to say give up our responsibilities, but that's in a way that's what it is. We don't want to be like a bunch of small children, not have any responsibilities. But when we give up the idea of what our story of the past and trying to fix something in the future, just set all that aside and taste the sweetness that is, the result of that, which is that presence. So, we'll start our meditation here in just a moment. I think we're all here, we're all settled. Yeah, use whatever it takes to get comfortable. I'll guide us through the first few moments of this. While I'm thinking about it, I think everybody knows where the restroom is, but if you do need, use the restroom, if you can go out that door, then go around the fireplace area and then go down the hall because of the camera here. Unless you want to be on camera. Close the eyes if you like. If you wanted to leave them open, just simply gaze in front of you 3 or 4 feet. And generally we close the eyes so that we can not be influenced by peripheral vision, and also so that we can, if we do use a mind sign or what is called a nimitta, we can see this behind the closed eyelids, which is oftentimes a small light or something of this sort that appears when we're concentrated. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen to a fair amount of people. Otherwise, in meditation, if we don't use a sign like that, some kind of visual object like a nimitta, we will probably be using the breath. And we can start our meditation by just simply noticing where we feel the breath on the body. Where do we feel the breath the most? It's like finding that sweet spot, that place to come back to when we notice the mind is wandering. There's so many elements of the breath that we can notice. Everything from the temperature to the coolness and the warmth. How it's a little bit cooler when it comes into the body and warm when it leaves. We can notice the length of the breath. Sometimes the inhalation is a little bit longer than the exhalation. We can notice the depth of the breath. How deep are we actually breathing? And is it comfortable? Is it relaxed? And we want to just allow the breath to be very natural. No manipulation of it. Just let the body do the breathing if we can, and the mind is just being aware, just noticing it. We might notice how every breath is different, like a snowflake. Just in a very subtle way, every breath is completely different than the one before it. And we can do things with the breath, such as counting. Very common setup practice, or just a practice that we can use periodically, if we like, in our meditation. To bring our attention back to the breath and count the breath for a while to really, really stay with it. And we can notice different aspects of the breath. The top of the inhalation, the bottom of the exhalation. really examining it like a private investigator. And try to pinpoint the middle of the breath and notice how that changes. And we can notice the top and the middle and the bottom of each inhalation and exhalation, or the beginning and the middle and the end of each breath. We can feel the breath at the tip of the nose, in the sinuses, in the windpipe, or the rising and falling of the abdomen. We can do all these things with the breath, and yet the mind, in most cases, will likely wander anyway. And if we notice where it wanders to, we can just touch that with our awareness and come back to the breath. And sometimes it'll feel as if we're not necessarily concentrating on the breath or focusing on it, but yet the mind is very steady. And so it seems as if the thoughts and the awareness of the breath and everything just kind of softens. And generally what this means is that we're not dwelling on the past or the future, and that we are present. We're not trying to do anything. We're not trying to think a particular thought or to condition the mind in any way. We're very open, and we've learned to let go of the mind dwelling on the past and thinking about something to fix in the future. And at this point, we could probably say that the body and the mind are healing, if we wanted to take a look at it from the physiological and the psychological aspect. The body and mind are healing just like it would in deep sleep, if there are no hindrances, no discursive thinking, and we're very present. So we're sitting with the breath and trusting this moment, accepting everything as it is, letting go of what should be let go of or needs to be let go of. And we're cultivating a peacefulness of mind and a stillness of the body. If you, if you like, you can bring your palms together in front of your chest. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. And may we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was brought up that people miss the chanting that we used to do, or not the chanting, but the
Sutra.
recitation of the metta, sutra, loving kindness sutra. And what I use for a closure here is another form of that. And there's lots of ways to practice metta, but we'll bring that back, and it's a nice little way to end it. But everybody have a good meditation? It's a nice quiet room, isn't it? I mean, there's.
Stomach.
Was that you? I thought it was Terry.
No, it's
No.
No, it's
I think it was, I heard 4 of us.
Stomachs were talking to each other,
Yeah.
communicating. That's the body,
Yeah.
stomach and my cough.
Yeah. The body being the body. You ever try to stop your stomach from growling? From that? It's not easy to do. Can't do it. It's like,
Yeah.
I gotta stop that somehow, Yeah, I used to teach at a place on Saturday. Sunday mornings up in Scottsdale. I thought Scottsdale really needs some meditation, up there. And this woman offered her Pilates studio, free of charge, to start something there. And she was never there. I only met her once, and she gave me a key to the place. So it was really nice, and a nice situation. But nobody came. Nobody ever came. It was me and one other person every time. But for some reason, my stomach would start growling so bad. It was just a small room, and I tried everything, like eating something beforehand, and it just did not work. I don't know. That time of day, and that's when you go, maybe it's my posture. Maybe I should, do something, and it just doesn't work. Can't stop it. It's just like the, a lot of things in the body that we can't stop. But I wanted to, if anytime anybody has any questions or anything that they want to share, please do so. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, some of the words, about our, the some of the language about the practice and stuff like that. The meditation that we do here is really like the formal. I like to add the word formal a lot of times, like the formal practice of meditation, because it's we're setting our intention to come in here and meditate, and hopefully all of us do a formal practice of meditation every day, like when we wake up in the morning or whatever, for whatever length of time, we have that formal, consistent practice of meditation. And the reason I like to say formal is because a lot of times I'll talk with people, and I'll say, do you practice meditation? And they'll say, yeah, but I don't always, get a chance to sit and practice. So I'll practice while I'm driving or when I'm doing the dishes, or and so it's to me that, like, if a person wants to practice mindfulness while they're shopping, or dealing with people, or driving, or there's some really whenever we get in nature, for example, that's a wonderful place to practice mindfulness. It's so easy, out there, because we're connecting with nature, and we're like a part of nature, and the self, just kind of gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and we can actually be in that presence and maneuver. And mindfulness is, to do the mindfulness practice is very easy. So I like to look at mindfulness as a byproduct, of a good meditation practice, a good formal meditation practice. That's kind of my verbiage, on meditation, formal meditation practice, and mindfulness, which we could say is our formal cultivation of the mind, when we're out doing our stuff. But these are just labels, and sometimes labels get in the way of the practice. But when we think about ideal places to practice our formal meditation, ideal places to practice mindfulness, what do we like to do? We oftentimes find out a lot about ourselves. Particularly, I think most of us, if you're like me, the more I practice meditation, the formal practice of meditation, the more mindful I am. And I noticed it years ago that I would practice, sitting in the morning, and then early in my practice, it was like, okay, I'm going to practice meditation. I'm going to kind of struggle through it, and then I'm done, and I would go on my way. But after a while, I would practice my meditation, and I'd get done, and that mindfulness would stay with me for a while. And I'd usually practice meditation in the morning, and then head off to work. And I noted that mindfulness would follow me. It was like it was with me all the way until I walked into the door of work, when I had a 9-to-5 job. And then it was gone, or something. I didn't try to hang on to it. And then what I would do is oftentimes practice a little bit on my lunch break, and then a little more mindfulness, and then at night I would practice a little bit too, so I could connect these periods together. But after a while, I noticed that I could practice meditation, same practice, same length of time. If I was consistent, then it would follow me for a longer time. It would follow me to work, and then when I opened up the door, it was still with me, and found that it would stay with me for a longer time, and eventually there's awareness that it can stay with you all the time. I mean, that as long as you are aware, and a big part of mindfulness is to memory, to remember to be mindful and to apply it. It's very important. And so when that happened, I really noticed how important a consistent practice of meditation was. Not just for the aspect of just the meditation itself, but what it does for our everyday life, our everyday activities. And there's different definitions of mindfulness, but generally, mindfulness is very, very present. Like we've been talking about presence before we started meditation, but we're not so worried about the past and the future, and we are there's very, very little judgment, and if there is judgment, we're aware that we're judging something. So in mindfulness, there's no judgment. It's usually no commentary, no decision on whether something is right or wrong, because when we're that aware, we're very moral. I mean, we don't go anything against the grain. We don't. There's very little ill will or anger or fear. And so it's almost like the state of that we were talking about, presence, without the hindrances, while we are out in the world, moving around, doing our work or whatever it might be. And then when we start noticing places that are really easy to, apply that mindfulness, like I said earlier, for me lately, it's going for walks or being in nature, especially, and also even at the store, you go to the store and you notice other people and you notice our sensory world can pull us in so many different directions. But when we're aware of that, and when we're aware of what we're seeing, what is going on, and our likes or dislikes, we see somebody that's dressed kind of funny or something, and if we notice how we look at that and how we judge that, like, that's wrong or that's right, it's very interesting, and that's really the key, I think, to be aware of all of that. And it really puts in a lot of zip in our life when we can be aware and go out and do our everyday activities, do it in a moral way, and really watch our likes and dislikes, what kind of mood and emotion we're having, and just what comes up for us. We in Buddhism, this consciousness, this word consciousness is actually, we have these sense organs, the seeing and the smelling and tasting and touching and hearing. And when these sense organs come into contact with a sense object, anything out there, that is a moment of consciousness. And so this consciousness is firing again and again and again. But a lot of times we're not even aware that it's happening. It's just we see something, and whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, sometimes it's pulling us towards something, or sometimes we're repelled from it, or it's neutral. We don't recognize it. We're not acknowledging it. And a lot of these things that our sense experiences are not acknowledged, especially today with our high tech machines and our phones and things like that. I think most of the stuff that we experience these days, even when we're driving, is not what it used to be 10, 20 years ago, because of the GPS and all these different things that are happening. We're looking just as much as we always looked, and we're hearing just as much and that, but we're not actually taking all of that in, and we're just missing a lot of it. It's just zipping by. And then, I think it was you, Paul, that said something a few weeks ago, like, what did you have for lunch?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
What did you have for lunch yesterday was his question.
Oh, what did you have for lunch
Yeah,
yesterday?
I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, and it's like,
No one knows.
yeah, if we were mindful and aware, we would know, And it doesn't take much, for us to notice the things that we're missing in life, and to bring all that back, because we can plan for the future and think about the future and think about the stuff that happened in the past and want to make sure that doesn't happen again, and all that. But we're bypassing, this moment. And in this moment is where our senses are firing. We're seeing stuff right now. We're hearing things. We're experiencing all these things. And there's a part of Buddhism that is, goes deeper, in the anatta, or the non-self, and it's as if all these experiences are happening, but they're not happening to an individual, person. And we're not going to get into that right now. That's kind of a deep topic, but all these experiences, we owe it to ourselves to notice them, notice what's happening each time. And that is a big part of mindfulness, without the judgment, which is tricky. But if we look at it from the standpoint of the first time we experience something before the judgment comes in, that is like a pure moment of mindfulness. You know, we're very, very present. We're experiencing something like a child would experience, like we never experienced it before. And of course, we can't be like that all the time, you know. But if we remember that and remember how these experiences affect us and how we react to things, and it just livens up our life, you know, so much more. That awareness. It's the child that, you know, experiences this, you know, you give this to a 3-year-old and they really, wow, that's fascinating, you know. But you give it to, if I hand that to Paul, he'll go, yeah, it's a mallet, you know. Whatever, I've seen these before, you know. And, but we're kind of cheating ourselves. And I think we all, you know, all agree with that. You know, just the feelings, you know, from the standpoint of Buddhism, that everything that we experience is either pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. And like I said before, we are like that ball in the pinball machine. You know, we're repelled off of these things we don't like, and we're drawn like a magnet towards the things that we do like, and that directs our life. Boing, 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 boing. What if we? And then there's the neutrality, those things that we don't recognize. And in Buddhism, they call that, it's actually a form of ignorance. But we don't use that word very much here because we don't want anybody to be offended, right? You know, we don't want to be ignorant. Although when we don't recognize that stimuli and these things, these experiences, that's really what it is. And so we don't, for the most part, we don't really recognize that we're repelling from things we don't like and being drawn to things we do like. But what if we were aware of that, everything that happened? What is holding us back from doing something that we want to do? The only thing that can be holding us back is that there's something there that we don't want, that we find unpleasant. But if we would go towards it and experience that, we would likely find that it's not nearly as unpleasant as we think it is. And in fact, you know, if we can tackle our fears, which are just delusional anyway, you know, all of our fears are false. We're created by ourselves because fear is based on the future. And it can't exist in the present moment. So when we're actually doing something and we're going towards those things that are seemingly unpleasant or, you know, even fearful, chances are they're not going to be at all what we imagine them to be. And it begins to change our lives in a huge, huge way. You know, there's really nothing that we can't do if somebody else has already done it. But yet, we fear, we don't want to go towards that, or it's unpleasant for us. So we, even subconsciously, no, I can't do that. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want that thing, you know. And so that's why in Buddhism, when we meditate, we start to realize that this sense-operated world that we have, you know, how these sense organs, you know, these ears, all they're doing is picking up vibrations. You know, we label it. We label it an airplane. You hear that airplane? It's not actually an airplane. You know, that's just a label. It's just a vibration that's hitting our ear. And we experience all these different things, but yet we don't really give ourselves a chance to, you know, fully develop it and see it for actually what it is in many cases. But I think if most of you are like me, to practice mindfulness and be present, it's almost like the more we get into nature itself, the easier it is. that true with everybody? It's in Paul's stomach.
It's just a vibration.
Protein drink, yeah.
That's just a vibration in the air.
It's not your
Go
stomach.
back up,
Yeah.
it was like,
So that Paul and stomach is just a label. And that was a vibration going in the ear, yeah. Sankara. So we have we experience all these things, but then we realize that there's a choice, what we want to do with all of this. How do we want to react, to this or this or this, so we all probably know people that are overly reactive to things that they shouldn't be reactive to, and maybe we're one of them. And that's all awareness, being aware, being mindful of it. And I think I mentioned it just a little while ago, and we can, when we are at that level of mindfulness and this presence, we can actually be thinking about the future and making plans, as long as we know that we're doing it, as long as we're aware of it. And we can be mindful while we're doing it. So, and that's, the kind of a level of the sages, a sage to me is somebody that's got some level of awakening, where they can be very, very present and still live a normal life. A lot of times we hear of, well, maybe you don't, but I do, I guess. I hear of these people that are highly awake and they're always in a state of samadhi, but they can't take care of themselves. They have to have somebody take care of it. They have to have somebody there with them. But the Buddha had attendants and things like that, but he was busy. He was walking around. He always walking and teaching. He taught within a 200-mile radius of where he was born, and he just walked that whole area. He knew that area well, and people would invite him, from different city, and him and his monks would walk over there and teach, and people would feed them, and so he could actually, be very, very, very present, very awakened, enlightened, and still operate, like a teacher, like a businessman, I guess you could say. And it can only be from being so aware and so mindful in the present moment that he's able to, make plans and even recall, things from the past, but do it in the present moment, to be aware that that is happening. But the difference between that and maybe like myself, a normal person, is that we get carried away with our thoughts. And we actually, like I said earlier, we actually think it's real.
you're attached.
Mm-hmm. And the body reacts to it. Cortisol, We're going full circle here. Going back.
Tie it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything from anybody? Any words of wisdom? We got and the reason I'm putting this out there is because I just advertised this one-day retreat on Facebook, and I don't always do that, but I know there's a lot of people that I don't connect with that's in my email list, and they're on Facebook, and I wanted to give them a chance to sign up for this retreat as well. But it's on February 10th. It's on a Sunday. And if you haven't signed up for it, please do, because if it's on Facebook, it's likely, I'm sorry, not on, well, it's on Facebook, but what I'm really talking about is Meetup. I put it on Meetup today. And what that means is that it could fill pretty quickly. So if you're interested in doing that, sign up. And I have some, if you want some more information on it, I got some sheets here that in my briefcase that I'll put over there. And I think, some of you have been at these one-day retreats and stuff. They're really worthwhile. And they're yummy too. Thanks to Terry, she makes the lunch.
Oh, the pressure is on.
Yeah. I still, sometime I still think I'm gonna get some Subway sandwiches. And
I'm just like, I'm just too busy, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice though. It's nice that people enjoy it. And
Yeah.
It smells good while it's cooking and it's just,
Yeah.
it's a love thing.
Adina from San Francisco signed up today, so she's
Oh,
gonna
she did?
she's gonna
Cool.
fly in for the retreat again, like she did in December, I think, or September. I think it was in September. No, October. Okay, whatever. But yeah. If you haven't done a one-way or any kind of retreat, the one-day retreat is the best way to start out, for sure. If you're into retreating.
Oh my gosh, yes, you will.
Shane?
Yeah.
Your 8-week on Saturday,
Yeah.
is it still, open for someone to join?
Yeah, you could start next Saturday if you wanted to, or whomever, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of people, for some reason, couldn't make that first class, and that does happen. So there'll be a handful of people registering, just like they're starting out. And so what I'll do is I'll do a review, like a 10-minute review of what we did the first class last Saturday, yeah. So if anybody's interested in joining that, I think there's 30 people right now. So it's a good comfortable number of people, but there's always room for more because it's not in this room. It's over at the temple there. So a Saturday morning, they said, I was just over at the Meditation Learning Center. And I said, well, what's it like over there? Anything going on? Maybe you ran into him, Chris. Was it on Saturday?
It was Dave.
Oh, Dave, okay. I can't remember who yeah. Okay, well, if nobody's got anything, I'm about done. So I thank you all for coming, and
Thank you, Shane.
yeah, thank you. We'll do it again next week. Looks like his streaming works, so that's great.
I had a protein shake and a candy bar.
Thank you.
You work hard all day, you gotta do that.
Time to cook.
No candy.
I know, and I shouldn't have eaten milk. It was-
Oh, yeah, that'll put my stomach in a
Yep.
tizzy for sure.
Lactose.